Members, again in accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, I call on Lynne Pillay to make her valedictory statement. Lynne Pillay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This will be my last speech I give in this House, and I'd like to start by acknowledging Pete Hodgson and Jim Anderton, who are also giving their valedictory speeches today. They have both made a tremendous contribution to our Parliament and to our country. Their combined service adds up to 48 years. I'm very happy to be saying farewell with them today. I've had some good advice that a valedictory speech should be dignified and not churlish, and I'll do my best to meet that standard. However, there are some things I really want to say, so if I offend anyone in the House today, I apologise in advance. It's often been said that there are no friends in politics. Mr. Speaker, that has not been my experience. I've made some wonderful friends, and not only in the Labour Party. Of course, I've made a few enemies too. In the interest of dignity, I won't mention their names, and I remain hopeful that they won't mention my name either. I first stood in Parliament in 1999 because I was committed to improving the rights of working people. That was a difficult time for so many New Zealanders. As a union organiser, I had seen the devastation that the Employment Contracts Act caused in working people's lives. I got to Parliament for a very brief 10-day stint as a list MP in 1999. Congratulations to Keith Locke, who actually took my space at the final count after the special votes came in. Keith, I bear you no malice. In 2002, I was elected as MP for Waitakere. The sheer joy of being part of the Helen Clark and Michael Cullen government that did so much to bring fairness back to New Zealand is something I will always hold dear. Not only the many things that I had campaigned for in my former life, fairer labour laws, enhanced health and safety in workplaces, modern apprenticeships, 4 weeks holiday, paid parental leave, increases to the minimum wage, and creating jobs for people. But also the restoration of income-related rents in state houses, free early childhood education for every 3 and 4-year-old child, affordable doctors' visits, tax credits through working for families, putting money in the pockets of families who really needed it, KiwiSaver and help with home ownership, and interest-free student loans. Those were exciting times and have made a mark in our history in making our country a better place for all New Zealanders. I've also had the opportunity to be part of some major social changes. These included the amendments to Section 59 of the Crimes Act and also the civil union legislation. Social change is always controversial. Emotions run high, people become polarised, misinformation becomes widespread, and there can be more heat than light in the debate. The easy option for some would be to pull back, to retain the status quo, but I could not in all conscience do that. Chairing the Justice Select Committee on the changes to Section 59 of the Crimes Act had its challenges. The law was never about criminalising parents for lightly smacking their kids. Rather, it was about protecting our children from being beaten. Sue Bradford introduced the legislation to Parliament as a member's bill. The Select Committee heard from hundreds of parents, caregivers, children, young people and organisations. I want to thank all the members of the Select Committee who treated every submitter with respect. I particularly want to acknowledge the invaluable contribution of my Labour colleagues Charles Chevelle and Anne Hartley. I also want to acknowledge Nationals Chester Burrows, who, despite a difference in opinion on how to achieve it, shared the same commitment to providing a safer environment for our nation's children. Lobbying at that time was full on, and it was a very intense time both inside and outside of Parliament. I recall a conversation with Doug Willerton from New Zealand First, who was supporting the change to the legislation. I said to him, "Dougie, are you still with us on changing Section 59? He replied, "Yes, but I've just been talking to Chester," and he told him his amendment seemed all right. Is that okay? I said, and I'm sorry about this, Chester, no, look, Chester means well, but his amendment won't be helpful. If you support it, I'll be heartbroken. He replied, in true Dougie style, "OK, sweetheart, I'll tell him I've changed my mind." Subsequently, Doug Willerton and the late Brian Donnelly were put under immense pressure from members of their party to change their stance. They never wavered, and I want to say in this House how much I admire their courage and their integrity. I had strong views about the damaging role played by some members of the media on the issue at the time, which makes it especially important that I congratulate all the wonderful organisations that advocated so strongly for our children because they knew it was the right thing to do. The civil union legislation was another important social change, and I'm proud to have been part of that change. I still struggle to understand why some people find it so difficult to recognise the right of all people to have their loving relationship acknowledged and celebrated. In 2007, my member's bill, the Human Rights Women in Armed Forces Amendment Bill, was drawn from the ballot. When the Human Rights Act was enacted, the New Zealand Defence Force had a policy of not allowing women to serve in combat roles, which was recognised in that legislation. However, the Defence Force had discontinued that policy in 2000. Despite the fact that the discrimination had ceased, the wording of the Act prevented New Zealand from complying with the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, known as CEDAW. The bill removed that wording and allowed us to ratify the United Nations Convention, an historic moment for New Zealand, and we bet the Australians to do it. Perhaps my proudest experience was being entrusted with the passage of the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Protection Bill in Parliament. The bill was promoted by Waitakere City Council under Mayor Bob Harvey's leadership, Auckland Regional Council and Rodney District Council. It provided long-term protection for the Waitakere Ranges, in particular from ad hoc development, described by the Commissioner of the Environment as death by 1,000 cuts. The Waitakere Ranges Protection Society and the Honourable Jonathan Hunt had campaigned for many years, and I'm proud to have played my part in providing added protection of this iconic landscape for generations to come. During my time in government and in opposition, I have been actively involved in victims' rights. I was the chair of the Justice Select Committee during the inquiry into victims' rights in 2007 and later became the Labour opposition spokesperson for victims' rights. At the inquiry, we heard from many victims of crime and also from some organisations. The messages were twofold. On one hand, some, like the Sensible Sentencing Trust and members of the media, focus almost exclusively on how long the perpetrator should be locked away. On the other hand, others saw more complex issues. Many told the Select Committee about feeling let down by their treatment within the justice system, a need for better information and support, more counselling, a victim's advocate, and enhanced restorative justice. Some progress has been made, but there is still much to do. Mr. Speaker, I'm not renowned as a bipartisan person, I will admit that. But this is one issue that cries out for a bipartisan approach. Victims' rights and law and order should not be a political football. If there is one message I would like to leave this House with, it is this. Making the Department of Corrections our second largest public service agency is nothing really to be proud of, and it will do nothing to guarantee community safety in the long term. On a less bipartisan note, one of the most challenging issues I've been involved in was ACC's cuts to counselling for victims and survivors of sexual abuse. Many campaigned for reinstatement of that counselling, including survivors and the professionals and organisations that support them. After almost a year and an independent inquiry, some counselling support was reinstated, but not before immense harm had been done, and to people who had already suffered so much already. I admire so much the tenacity and the courage of those women and men, and it was a privilege to work alongside them. My other recent role was as opposition spokesperson for disability issues. Whilst we're in government, some exciting things happened in the disability sector. This including making New Zealand Sign Language an official language in New Zealand in 2006. New Zealand being awarded the prestigious Franklin D. Roosevelt International Disability Award in 2007, and ratifying the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2008. However, there are many challenges ahead. In these hard economic times, disabled people are the most adversely affected in terms of education, training and employment opportunities. It is government's role to ensure that all citizens have the ability to participate in society and to reach their full potential. Mr. Speaker, my maiden speech drew on my experiences as a union organiser. In fact, it was those experiences that brought me here, and my belief in the need for a strong, democratic union movement remains. The contribution of unions and workers is essential to the well-being of working people and their families. I can only hope that I have honoured their contribution during my time here. There are many people here, Mr. Speaker, that I want to acknowledge today. All the hard-working parliamentary staff, the messengers, the security, people, the cleaners, Hansards, select committee, buildings, travel, library, all of the workers here, without exception, do a tremendous job. My office in Waitakere has been very busy, and people have come with many issues, from immigration to ACC to housing, training, jobs, education and health, just to name a few. We couldn't fix everything, but I know we were able to assist in making some really positive changes in people's lives. That is one of the most rewarding parts of the job, and it only happens because of the extraordinary commitment of wonderful staff. I want to thank all of my staff over the last 9 years, and in particular in Waitakere, Debbie Taylor, Don Clark, Elisa Hyde and Megan Murphy, who is with us now. And here in Parliament, Gay Pledger and Michael Berger and Richie Wards, who is also with me now. They are all fantastic people and have done so much to support me personally and have gone all out to assist the people that needed it most. To my hard-working Westie Labour team over the years, including but not restricted to my famous and fellow Westie MPs, Carmel Sepuloni, David Cunliffe and Darian Fenton, and now Phil Twyford. Enzo and Gina Giordani, Debbie Taylor, Mike Loughran, Brian and Mary Lythe, Beverly Buffett, Donna and Noreen Clark, Trixie and Bruce Harvey, Hamish McCracken, Barbara and Len Hill, Jerry, Neil McKenzie, Nairi, Kimberly Inu, Mohammed Fayez, Tala, Eric Beckett, Jeremy Greenbook-Held, Gary Marshall, Kerry Christian, Barbara Hutchinson, Celia, Dave Downing and Dave Munro. Their support never wavered, both for me and for Labour. They are all people I very much admire and am proud to call my friends. And of course, all of my mates in the wider Labour whānau. I'm going to get a bit emotional now. Just pause, everybody, for a moment. My taxi driver, Dorothy, who works harder than anybody I know. I will really miss those Tuesday morning and Thursday evening journeys hearing about her family. Dorothy's 5 children are all at university or will be there in the future. That's testament to her and her husband's support and self-sacrifice. I am heartened that policies like working for families, interest-free student loans, abolition of youth rates and increases to the minimum wage have helped.